This is my gear, and I point this around. See?
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Some young souls are born to be free, much like a wild bird held captive in a cage. Even if you love them, if you want what's best for them, you will have to let them go. But what if the captor refuses to do so? They could either hold on to them, or make sure nobody else could have them. This is the infuriating case of Zuzu Verk. Welcome back to CASE Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive CASE family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Please uplift each other in the comments. Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Choosing to be kind can save a life in many ways. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me. Our love and respect goes out to those that knew and loved Zuzu. Just like small towns all across America, Alpine, Texas is known for its peace and tranquility. With a population of just over 5,000 people and its geographic location within the world's largest dark sky reservation, Alpine is a perfect destination for those wishing to lay back, relax, and gaze upon the wonders of the universe on a calm, clear night. It was the beautiful terrain and wildlife that drew 21-year-old Zuzu Verk to the small West Texas town. Words she had written herself. Named after the character Zuzu Bailey from the timeless Christmas movie It's a Wonderful Life, Zuzu Verk was every bit as whimsical and free-spirited as her namesake, with a personality that fills the room. By the way, I absolutely love this name. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. A biology major at Sul Ross State University at the time of her disappearance, Zuzu was born on April 22, 1995 to Glenn and Lori Verk in Keller, Texas. After graduating from Timber Creek High School in her native Keller, Zuzu moved to Alpine during the 2014-2015 school year. Zuzu was kind of quirky and artsy and a lover of the outdoors. She became an unofficial daughter to the community, Lori Verk said in a statement to one news outlet. She was described by one friend as comforting. Zuzu always knew the right things to say. She could cheer anyone up. Another acquaintance called her a sassy star child who made Alpine home for me. Zuzu was well known in her adopted hometown of Alpine, where she lived with her brother Miles. He himself mentioned that she was the best sister you could ever have. Whilst a student at Sul Ross, Zuzu worked with the Borderlands Research Institute and the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. For her outstanding efforts while attending the university, Zuzu was named on the Dean's List. Independent and outgoing, Zuzu had applied for a transfer to Texas A&M University on the very week that she vanished, hoping to continue her studies and eventually move on to Japan. While in Alpine, Zuzu had met a man named Robert Fabian. 4 years her senior, by all accounts, Robert was deeply in love with Zuzu. In fact, according to Miles Zerk, he had thought that Robert loved her more than she loved him. But he was also known to be extremely jealous and was described by one peer as being all consumed by the thought of Zuzu leaving the Alpine area. Robert was described by Zuzu's mother Lori as being tall, dark and handsome, but with an attitude, saying he was arrogant, manipulative and all about Robert. Mother Lori last spoke with Zuzu on October 10th, 2016. Zuzu told her mother that she was planning to tell Robert about her plans to transfer to Texas A&M, approximately 500 miles away from Alpine, which would be a final way of breaking off the on-again, off-again relationship. But several days went by without any contact from Zuzu to Lori, something one of Zuzu's best friends, Adriana Doggett, would call shocking. The family were normally very close. The distraught mother went so far as to text Zuzu saying, "Please tell us you're alive," as more and more time passed since she had been in touch with her daughter. In a desperate attempt to locate her child, Laurie contacted Robert, who claimed he was giving her space and had not seen her. But after her urging, he finally contacted police to perform a welfare check on the young student. However, Robert failed to mention that he had dinner with Zuzu to her mother before she vanished. But after being told about the dinner by Zuzu's friend, Robert Verk found this to be very suspicious. So when Zuzu Verk was officially reported missing on October the 4th, 2016, it was not a matter of if but when her boyfriend Robert Fabian would become a person of interest in this case. Officials and community members began a series of searches for the missing girl. However, one resident who was notably absent was boyfriend Robert Fabian. Robert now told investigators that on the evening in question, he had invited Zuzu over for a romantic dinner date. They shared a meal and some champagne, but when Robert mentioned his ex-girlfriend in conversation, he claimed Zuzu became angry and left his apartment somewhere around 2 to 3 a.m. He then told the interviewing officer, Captain Daryl Lasoya, that when Zuzu had stopped responding to his messages, he simply assumed she needed space. Until he received a distraught text message from Laurie indicating she hadn't been able to contact her daughter either. Robert told the officer that Zuzu wanted to continue on a friends with benefits type relationship rather than anything serious, and he characterized their relationship as a roller coaster. When police questioned Robert's downstairs neighbor, John Franco, he indicated to them that he had seen Robert leave the building at around 4 a.m. alone, and that Zuzu's car was still in the parking lot well into the morning when he left for work after 10 a.m.
You can hear him moving or stuff around, playing music, and then she shows up. They make dinner like at 9, 10. You can smell their food, and you can hear them conversation and then laugh a little bit, and then it got quiet like after 11. We just heard one shut the F up. And that was it.
Neighbour Franco also told police that he could hear arguing, along with what he could only describe as unique noises coming from Robert's bedroom. During a second interview with Captain Lasoya, when notified of what his neighbour had told investigators, Robert recanted part of his previous statement. He now told police that after the argument he had left and gone for a drive, and when he returned to the apartment, Zuzu was still there, and only then left some time after. The police captain made it clear during the interview that he was suspicious of Robert, saying, "You know, I think you're leaving some stuff out." Robert would then consent to a search of his apartment, which turned up a mattress pad and some clothes in the building's laundry, everything stained by bleach. Oddly enough, his bed had been stripped bare with not even a pillowcase left. While interviewing Robert, investigators noted he always spoke of his girlfriend in the past tense, as if he was already aware of what gruesome fate had befallen her. Within 2 weeks of Zuzu Verk being reported missing and the suspicious circumstances piling up against him, investigators named Robert Fabian as a suspect in the disappearance of his girlfriend in a news release on Facebook. The same release also named Robert's best friend, Chris Estrada, as a person of interest. Estrada had known Robert since high school, and the two were in contact often. Phone records indicated that on the morning of October the 12th, Estrada received a call from Robert at 3:15 a.m. Estrada initially tells investigators that he picked Robert up at his sister's later that day to hang out and go to dinner. When he picked up Robert, he claimed his sister asked him to drive him to the Dollar General and to loan him his credit card as he had forgotten his at home. At the dollar store, Robert purchased some plastic painter's drop cloths, which Estrada claimed were used when he helped Robert paint a table at his apartment later that evening. But a statement from Robert's friend, Brittany Gasker, painted a completely different picture. She said Chris Estrada came to her home shortly after he had left Robert Fabian around 12 a.m. on October the 13th. She described him as looking like he'd seen a ghost, and not himself. After asking her friend what was wrong, Chris replied, "I don't want to get you involved. Just don't ask me any questions." Brittany was not aware that Chris had been with Robert earlier that night, and it wasn't until about 5 days later that she learned of Zuzu's disappearance. After speaking to a mutual friend, Josh Kobos, who himself had an eerie conversation with Robert, they both decided they should contact the police to give a statement. Throughout the weeks and months following the disappearance of Zuzu, her family held several press conferences urging the community to not give up searching for their daughter, and even going so far as to make a public plea directly to Robert Fabian to cooperate with the authorities, saying, "Robert, if you love Zuzu, you will come down here and you will help the police bring my sister home," Miles Verk said in a press conference later that October. But as days turned into weeks, and though the police believed they had their suspect, there were simply no more leads to follow and the investigation slowed to a halt. "We didn't hear anything for so long, we all just figured she had passed away," stated Bo Marcotte, a fellow student at Sul Ross State University. That is until February the 3rd, 2017, when a Border Patrol agent named Jared Maynard stumbled upon a ditch in the desert containing human remains. The remains were exhumed and positively identified to be those of Zuzu Verk, wrapped in what appeared to be a plastic painter's drop cloth, much like the ones purchased by Robert Fabian at the Dollar General the day before Zuzu was reportedly last seen. It took investigators less than 24 hours to arrest Robert Fabian and to charge him with tampering with evidence in concealing a human corpse. Chris Estrada was arrested 2 days later in Arizona, charged with the same felony. Chris pled no contest to charges of tampering with evidence in April 2018, with prosecutors recommending leniency for his crimes. Estrada agreed to testify against his best friend, Robert Fabian, a best friend who was now being charged with the first-degree murder of Zuzu Verk.
Lori Verk tells me she's not surprised by Robert's indictment, but rather relieved.
That's what we've thought all along, and I'm very grateful for the grand jury. They've been working on this long and hard, too.
And now she's finally seeing the first steps of justice being served against the man she believes was behind her daughter's disappearance.
This is an opportunity for you to just talk. Zuzu's parents are right here. They just want to know if you have anything to do with it.
The trial began the first week of May 2019. After the initial proceedings, the first 2 days of testimony were largely various witnesses. They included Zuzu and Robert's family and friends recounting their statements to police during their initial investigation. The defense team for Robert Fabian maintained that neither his fingerprints nor DNA were found on any incriminating evidence connecting him to Zuzu's death, and that any evidence presented thus far was purely circumstantial. On the third day of the trial, Chris Estrada was called to testify.
They believe I helped, a cover-up.
And did you?
No. Just hung out and had some drinks. To me, it was a normal day, and I guess now it never will be.
He claimed that his initial recollection of events to investigators was true. However, when the pair returned to Fabian's apartment after dinner, Robert told Chris he needed to speak to him about a life or death matter. According to Chris, Robert explained to him that the dinner had gone well, but at some point things had gotten physical. He said Robert described having his hands around Zuzu's throat when she started to hyperventilate and stopped breathing. At that point, he said he attempted to perform CPR on his girlfriend but could not revive her. She was gone, Robert told his friend, and her body was still laying under the covers in his bedroom. After the confession, Estrada said Robert asked him to help move Zuzu's body from his apartment. According to Estrada, it was then he became worried and left, ending up at another friend's house. After visiting her, he went home and fell asleep. Chris then explained that Robert asked him for assistance in moving the body a second time, saying that he just wanted to get her out. He also asked his friend not to report him to law enforcement. Chris Estrada then testified that although he declined to help his friend move Zuzu's body, he told him that he wouldn't report the crime to the authorities. When asked why he chose not to turn in his friend, Estrada replied, "It was a difficult decision, but at the time, that is what I chose. Today, it would be different." Although commenting on his change of heart and decision to testify, Estrada stated, "At some point, I decided everyone needed some closure." Perhaps as shocking as a testimony of Chris Estrada was that of Roy Roman. He had been Robert's cellmate during his time at Brewster County Jail. Roman claimed that Fabian had explained to him that Zuzu had found out about a bisexual relationship between himself and Chris Estrada, and she was threatening to expose it. At that point, he said Robert told him anger took over. He also told the court that at night he could hear Robert weeping, saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you." Ultimately, Robert Fabian was found guilty of the murder of Zuzu Verk by a jury of his peers. He was sentenced to life in prison for the murder, plus 20 years for the charge of tampering with evidence. For his testimony, which led the way in securing a conviction, Chris Estrada received a sentence of 42 months plus costs on the charges of tampering with evidence. Robert Fabian afterwards appealed the ruling, stating he received ineffective assistance of counsel, and that the court erred in allowing accomplice witness and jailhouse informant to testify in the trial, among other technicalities. A judge ruled that the guilty verdict in the original case should be upheld, and that all evidence in the case was sufficient corroborated. Robert Fabian is currently incarcerated in the state of Texas penal system. Do you think the punishments fit the crime here? What do you think happened on that fateful night? Let me know down in the comments. And please do hit like if you appreciate what I'm doing here. Thank you to everyone in the Dark Case crew. You too can become a channel member for just 99 pence. A huge thank you to my patrons. Your support makes a massive difference. You too can support my work and be thanked in every video for just $5 per month. So thank you to Rachel David, Kathy Green, David James, Addie Alexander, Karen Jones, El Palmieri, James Harrington, Shane Woodward, Faster River, Stacey Krogerus, Summer Chambers, Mona Corona, Cepheid Variable, Anthony Watson, Jason Coward, and Jeremy Sebranek. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.